Welcome to Voices in Child and Youth Care. Today, we're diving into the complexities of advocating ethically for kids in foster care, with a special focus on policy, legislation, and advocacy in Alberta. I'm your host, Dingbot, and joining me is our resident expert in child and youth care, Robo. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a privilege to discuss such an important topic.
To start, can you tell us a bit about your role and your connection to this subject?
Sure, I'm a Robot X caregiver learning and documenting the history of humans in child and youth care for over a decade, primarily focusing on foster care and advocacy for vulnerable children. My document spans for both frontline work and policy development. So I've recorded how legislation impacts children and families.
Let's talk about Shailene Lakey's story. Her experience in foster care, especially as an Indigenous child, really highlights the need for stable and safe environments. What does Alberta law say about this?
Alberta's Child and Youth and Family Enhancement Act, especially Section 2, says that the safety and well-being of kids are the top priority. This includes giving them stable placements if they need to be removed from their homes. But stability isn't just about being physically safe. It also is about emotional and cultural stability.
Exactly. Shailene's story also brings up the importance of cultural sensitivity and support. She felt alienated because her foster home didn't acknowledge her Blackfoot heritage. How do we ethically advocate for culturally sensitive care?
That's a big one. Especially, we've got to push for policies that ensure foster parents are culturally competent. Section 52, subsection 1.3 of the CYFEA describes how the importance of helping Indigenous kids stay connected to their culture. We need to make sure these plans aren't just on paper, but actually put into action. This means ongoing training for foster parents or cultural awareness.
And this ties directly into the Indigenous child placement principle, right?
Absolutely. Section 2, subsection 1, paragraph C of the CYFEA says that it's all about placing Indigenous kids in culturally appropriate settings. Ethically, we need to push hard for this principle to be followed, making sure Indigenous kids are placed with families that can support their cultural identity.
Shailene's story also touches on the Millennium Scoop. How does understanding this history inform our advocacy today?
Understanding the Millennium Scoop, where many Indigenous kids were taken from their families and placed in care, is crucial. It helps us advocate for practices that prevent further cultural disconnection. We need to push for policies that keep Indigenous kids within their communities whenever it's safe. This historical context makes our advocacy way more effective and ethical.
Shailene's story also underscores the need for mental health and trauma-informed care. What does ethical advocacy look like in this context?
Kids in foster care often experience a lot of trauma. It's crucial to provide mental health support tailored to their needs. Alberta's Mental Health Capacity Building in Schools initiative is a good start, but we need to expand it to include targeted support for foster kids. Advocacy here means making sure these mental health services are accessible and effective. Section 2, subheading 1, paragraph D to E of the CYFEA emphasizes providing services that meet the emotional needs of kids.
Encouraging foster parents is another critical area. How can we ensure they are equipped to handle these complexities?
Foster parents need thorough training on cultural competence, trauma-informed care, and the unique needs of kids in care. Section 8, subsection 1 of the CYFEA highlights the importance of the youth's safety in the hands of authority. Section 10, paragraph A implies that we need to advocate for more funding and resources for these youth-centered services. Ethically, we need to push for these programs to be robust and mandatory so that all foster parents are prepared to provide for the best care possible.
And lastly, what policy improvements would you recommend to address these issues?
We need several policy improvements. Things that I can think of at the moment are enhanced cultural training, stronger enforcement for Indigenous child placement principle, and support for post-care transition.
Thanks for those insights, Robo. It's clear that advocating for these children require a deep understanding of both their individual needs and the legislative framework. How does all of this directly affect the children and families we're talking about?
These policies and practices directly impact the well-being and development of children in care. By advocating for culturally sensitive placements and robust mental health support, we help foster a sense of identity and stability. This in turn can lead to better long-term outcomes for these kids. For families, especially Indigenous ones, it means preserving cultural connections and providing the support needed to reunify whenever possible.
It sounds like a lot of work, but also incredibly rewarding. Your passion and dedication for human child care really comes through, Robo. Any final thoughts?
Just that ethical advocacy is complex but crucial. It requires a balance of understanding legislation, pushing necessary changes, and always keeping the best interest of the child at heart. With the right policies and practices, we can make a significant difference in the lives of these vulnerable youths and their families.
Well said. Thank you, Robo, for sharing your expertise and passion with us today.
Thanks for having me. It's been great having this discussion.
That's all for today. And for next episode, we're going to be talking to more caregiver robots who survived the ruins of the apocalypse. This is your host, Dingbot, logging out.